Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. And welcome back to Radio Ramadan 87.7 FM. This is the final whistle. My name is Ahmed Maravia. I've got some wonderful guests who I'm going to introduce shortly as well. Tonight, we're turning our attention to something affecting many of our young adults here in the UK, racism in grassroots football, which has been around for the past 50 to 55 years. Football is meant to unite communities, but at grassroots level, where children, teenagers and adults develop their love of the game, racism, unfortunately, remains a healthy subject. Whether you're from the touchline, on the pitch, or even on social media, an issue we cannot forget. Joining me today are two big-time legends. I've got John from Highfield Rangers, who's an experienced player, coach for over 40 years, and also produced some of his football TV shows and documentaries. Thank you for being with us. And also I've got the legend himself, Kirk Master. So, Assalamu alaikum, Kirk.
Assalamu alaikum, how are you?
Welcome, John. How are you?
Yeah, very good, thank you.
Nice to have John here as well.
Yes, it is. Your drive, is it okay?
Yeah, very good. But before I start,
Yeah,
telling you all about my drive, I just want to wish you and your listeners a really blessed month. So
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Appreciate
Kirk, how's
that.
the Ramadan going?
Really good. I enjoy the fasting. Obviously, the timetable changes a bit. Yeah, you know, it's tough because you put some expectations on yourself. So I'm trying to get through those, but hopefully, fingers crossed, I'll make it through. But yeah, I'm enjoying it.
Right, let's get down to the nitty-gritty. If you want to call us, studio number is 0116 4822 086. You can SMS or WhatsApp on 077 488 55055. We're live on Facebook, YouTube, follow LinkedIn, TikTok, Twitter, Spotify, and Instagram. Right, first of all, football. Professionally, racism goes on, discrimination goes on. Obviously, online, on the terraces, and on the pitches as well. Recent research has shown across quite a few participants that 47.5% report experiencing discrimination in grassroots football, race being the most common. Is it systematic, institutional, or is it people just don't like us? Surveys have also indicated around 73 participants don't believe reporting leads to any meaningful action. I just want to get back to you, John, if that's okay. As a player, when did you first experience any form of racism to your teammates, whether playing or managing or coaching?
Well, it started. I had this unusual path into football in the sense that I played obviously back in the 70s in Leicester for a very ethnically white side. We played against Highfield Rangers on the park at Vicky Park. I went to university, another very privileged and, let me say, not ethnically diverse kind of situation. Then I went to London, and in London, through a complete accident, probably engineered a bit, I'll tell you why maybe it happened, but I started to play for a largely West Indian club. We had a few African players, a few Asian players actually as well, in Harlesden, so right in Wembley, Harlesden area, not far from Southall. And that started, ever since, frankly, I've always played for ethnically diverse football clubs. I think one of the major reasons I might have ended up there is I'm not a drinker. I found that really put me off in playing for white sides. I played up to semi-pro, and I also, my background, because I, like maybe many people who are listening tonight, I came to Leicester as a 5-year-old, son of 2 immigrant parents. So I'm the son of immigrants. My parents escaped Nazi Germany and Nazi Austria in the late 30s via America, came to England, and we settled, of all places, in Leicester. So that's how my background also made me always feel that I was different to locals. I was a foreigner, or the son of foreigners. We spoke different language at home. We had different food at home. A lot of my parents' circles were also had come out of the Holocaust, so there's no way I could avoid it. It was very much in my face. You know, I looked like every other European in Britain at that point, but I knew I wasn't, and that also, I think, influenced me in what I've done. So I've had this really weird time of now when I look at it, it's nearly 55 years of playing well, no, that's an exaggeration. Sorry, 45 years of playing.
You're not making yourself look younger,
No,
are you?
no. In ethnically
You don't look
diverse
older than
teams.
40,
I know he
John.
doesn't.
but
Thank you, mate.
look,
Yeah, thank
look
you.
fit as a
I'll go
butcher's
home
dog.
now. I've got what I wanted. That's it. But so that and so I was. Can you basically? I started playing in the early '80s around London, and it was a difficult time. Every match we played, Middlesex Senior League, the team I played for, it was one of the oldest West Indian teams in the country as well. Constantine, that played in the Middlesex Senior League, one of the first black sides, a bit like Highfield Rangers here,
Right.
who got into that level. And we would play out in the county, basically, and every game felt a bit like a battle. You could feel the tension in the air. You could feel that you were different to the other team. The other team made you feel different. There was just an atmosphere of tension from the start to the finish in the end. And then I watched that improve. So I don't think it's a tale of over all those decades of it getting worse until maybe recently I've seen a bit of a turn in the other direction again. But gradually over the years, I do feel it got better. In London particularly, I used to come back to Leicester and play, and I didn't feel it was getting better here as quickly as in London. It just became... diverse teams just grew more and more in London, quicker, understandable, more communities there, etc., etc. But I've got to say, for those early years in the 80s, it really felt hostile. Every match, really. Very rarely did it not. But it has improved. And I mean, we'll talk about this more. I think I've said enough about kind of where I come from and why, what I've experienced.
Well, look, Kirk, you've played a high level as well. Have you? I mean, I know you've probably experienced quite a bit in your career as well.
Yeah, it's kind of come full circle for me, to be honest, from my playing days into kind of facilitating or operationally a club, trying to steer a club into the non-league system, and then also watching my own boys develop in the same space, firstly through the pro game and then in the semi-professional space. And to be honest, has it got any better? I think opportunities are more in terms of playing opportunities for people from diverse backgrounds. Opportunities to play at other clubs that historically would not have wanted ethnic players to play in their clubs. But I believe a lot of that is only due to performance, because they want to improve performance-wise, not because of acceptance of individuals. So yeah, the racism journey continues, unfortunately, and with the state of affairs of where we are from a society, we can see it being played out in the streets, we can see it being played out in our politics, we can see it being played out everywhere. So unfortunately, football is going to be no different. I think why, and I'm sure you'll come on to it, some of the work that we're trying to undertake now is really important, is to separate out the discrimination, other discrimination factors, which are important. I'm not trying to take those away, but racism is core. And we have to deal with racism first and foremost. We can deal with all the other bigotry factors around discrimination and all of those other things as well. But for us, I think it's important, especially for cities like Leicester, where the population is so diverse. We have to challenge racism head on and not let that be diluted by other labels and other brands that want a piece of that pie, because that's what's happened historically, especially strategically from football authorities and other big national organisations, strategic bodies. You put them all in one box, it's easier then. But it isn't. For us, it doesn't solve issues. You know, and we need to challenge this and tackle this head on. It's not going away, but we have to try and take a stand and take a lead on it. And if we don't, like you say, it will just get worse and it will get worse and it will continue. And there's multiple examples, you know, I could give probably just as John said, since the season started in August, I've probably spoke to 20 different clubs up and down the country that have faced racism at a strategic level, operational level, and players on the pitch. And it is getting bad. It's getting bad.
Do you think the authorities are failing, John?
I think the authorities have failed throughout the period, i.e., as we can see, racism has never gone away. For all these campaigns and all the stated aims from FIFA to UEFA, down to Premier League, to grassroots football, I suppose, in a way, I know this is going to sound maybe controversial. Maybe we should be really grateful that there's still a national organisation that is opposed to racism, because actually we're getting into a situation here where racism is becoming much more accepted, from flags to statements from politicians about not seeing too many black people or brown people in adverts or in Birmingham. You know, at that level now, at official levels in this country, we are seeing increased levels of racism. We've still got an FA and a Premier League that at least is saying it is against it, and UEFA and thing. But the fact is, this has been said so many times, those statements are not really followed up by effective action. So unfortunately, and I don't know if we ever can envisage a time, us three, can we envisage a time when there's no racism? Tough to see. No. But it should definitely have been dealt with, and more specific instances punished. Beyond the general statements that we are against racism. And that's the difficulty, I think, and has been throughout my time. I cannot remember really I've played for so many clubs, and I cannot remember any racist incident actually resulting in accountability, which is pretty astonishing, really, when you think 40-odd years.
Because, like you say, no one's born a racist. Is it society's problem that is bringing that into football, would you say, Kirk?
Absolutely, it's everywhere. It's everywhere. So it's inevitable. Yeah. You know, you can't say this is a standalone issue in a sports space, in a football space, on a football field, because it isn't. It is broader than that. The thing that we need to challenge, and the thing that we can't accept, is that to make it acceptable in that space can't be right. So we have to challenge all of the kind of drivers of society that are saying racism is okay. We can say, okay, we can't deal with a school environment. We can't deal with an employment environment. We can't deal with some social environments. But here in this space, we're not having it. And that's the stand that we need to take as communities more and more and more. And that's the message that we need to start getting out there, to say we can't deal with macro factors of society. We're not big enough to deal with that. But in our sports spaces, our clubs, our pitches, where our young people are, where our families are, where the women and the dads are coming to watch the games, we can say, no, that's not happening here. And we have that power. We have that power. We've just got to unite and come together to be able to say, these are the principles that we're going to follow. The national bodies like the FA and the governance of these racism organisations and etc. can't say they won't support you if they're saying that we're fighting racism, because that's what we're taking a stand on. Exactly. So it'll be a kind of bizarre situation if they say we don't agree with what you're doing, because we'll say, well, what are you here for then? So it's just about taking the kind of initiative and putting some markers down.
I mean, I was talking to a parent a couple of weeks ago, and he said, you know, he'd played a level, and he was from London as well, and he goes, obviously, he literally said to me what you said, what it was like in London in the 80s. Okay, you had all the troubles as well and all that. And he said, and from his experience, and he goes, my kids have experienced worse than what I experienced. He goes, the system is ineffective. The sanctions are not sufficient, literally. So he goes, for me, if you ask me, is grassroots football safe for the black and ethnic minority? He said no. I said, look, there is things in place, but would you say it's safe? Would you, I mean, if you had a son now, 7, 8-year-old, would you talk to your son and say, you are going to experience this in your football career sometime in your career? Kirk, what would you say?
Yeah, 100%. You know, look, as I said, I've played and I've been at a club and worked with clubs nationally and locally. In all the time that I've been associated to football, there hasn't been an incident, a rolling incident of racism occurrence in that setup, in that structure. It's there. You're going to have to deal with racism as a young person, as a club, as a parent, as an official. If you don't expect to deal with racism, then you know, unfortunately, you're going to be very surprised when it slaps you in the face.
True.
I mean, the difference is, and you'll know this as well from running a club, if it's friendly in terms of the game, where you're a nice club that competes but doesn't win or doesn't challenge for silverware and leagues and cups, you're a lovely club. Oh, CFA, great club, you know, they come, you know, but we always win 4-1. It's nice. Yeah. The day CFA turns up and wins 4-1, you're not a nice club anymore. it becomes hostile.
Yeah.
Like John says, the environment changes. When it becomes competitive and now you start to be more of a dominance, something changes very quickly. You know, this friendly club that you once were when you're not competing has now become a threat.
Would that come down to hatred and jealousy? Would that play a part, would you say?
Yeah, I mean, it's part of...
Or you being successful?
Yeah, I mean, that doesn't help. But, you know, clearly racism is unfortunately very much a feature of the society. So why it would not appear in football would be really weird in a way if it didn't. And I think there's this gap still between public general sweeping statements of being anti-racism and the actual tackling with the issue in as it happens each time. And the thing about racism, when you said, is it safe? I mean... I've lived through a lot of physical intimidation, and you know we dealt with it. But where it isn't safe is the hurt. You're not safe from the hurt. So I mean, you know, I played for a Jewish club for a while that played senior league. That you know, I would get abused there. I would get abused playing for a black or brown club because I was a white person playing in that environment. So and that felt easier to deal with up to a point. When I was so I've seen both sides of the fence. When I was playing for a Jewish club and got racially abused, that really hurt. It always hurt me also when I played for a black club because I was a team member and I felt these were my teammates, my brothers, and you know after 40 years you react as well. So in that sense, you're never safe from that hurt.
It's trauma.
It is.
It's trauma.
It
doesn't go away. It's like any other form of trauma.
Correct.
It exists. It's
Correct.
real.
And on the moment, I'm sure you guys have, you know, you rise, you get a very emotional response, and that's maybe one of the reasons why it never gets dealt with adequately, is because that emotional response often manifests itself in a reaction to the aggression, which is sometimes aggressive in itself, and then you get in a tit-for-tat situation where the FA or the governing bodies, the kind of initial trigger gets lost. And I think these are some of the things we're going to look at and more to how do we take the heat. So we now see their protocols at the professional level to try and take that heat of hurt and trauma, as you say, out of the immediate situation. You know, call a halt to the game, record that something racist is alleged to have happened, etc. Very difficult to do in maybe at grassroots level, but I think one needs to look at things like that to take that initial heat and hurt out of it. So there's that sort of micro stuff that maybe we can at least get more incidents really properly looked at and not lost in a situation where there was a kerfuffle and the thing got, oh, well, you were all as bad as each other kind of thing, like both teams or whatever. And I think that's a really important thing, because I think we now need to really not put up with the fact, as Kurt says, that, oh, well, racism exists, the league's against it, grassroots governing bodies are against it, but the reality is it is not dealt with adequately when it actually happens, and that's the battle. And I think the more that groups like this form and can be strong and resolved and disciplined and committed, the fight can carry on in a much more organised and therefore I think effective way.
You just made a good going back to governing the body. The governing body for football in England, the FA. Yeah. Right, they've got frameworks, they've got policies, you've got, like Kurt goes, you've got organisations like Kick It Out, Show Racism, the Red Card. Yeah. We've all heard of stories up and down the countries where clubs have provided witness statements where incidents happen. We've provided the statements, photos, video statements, everything that goes with it, with the protocol and procedure to a case. But when it comes to the actual case of the hearing, gets thrown out due to technicalities, not enough evidence, or he said this, did you hear it? And I always say, if someone's going to make a racist remark on or off the pitch, it's never going to say, ref, can I just stop the game? I just want to call him the P word, the N word. It's never, because he's always under the radar.
Of course it is, yeah.
Right, the case is lost due to lack of evidence or not enough satisfactory.
Exactly.
What are your thoughts of the governing bodies letting the clubs down, Kirk?
100%. It's fact. It's on record.
Yeah.
You know, I don't have to give you my opinion or my experience. You just look back of the historic records of incidents dealt with of racism by the governing bodies in the structure that we operate in, and it will tell you clearly, black and white, it's failing. Because the number of incidents and the number of sanctions and the number of positive outcomes in terms of people being disciplined and sanctioned and fined and suspended is ridiculous in the comparison of what's going on the ground in games and at clubs and what outcomes are being produced. It's ridiculous. You know, I could say a lot stronger words than that, but that's probably what you'll get at this moment in time. And for me, now is not my personal opinion right now. I do not. I think we're equipped well enough as clubs. We have the intelligence, we have the numbers, we have the experience, we have the kind of drive to do these things as well. For me, it's about not relying on these governing bodies anymore. True. It's working with these governing bodies where we can and when we can, but it's about us taking the initiative.
Yes.
Not relying on them to protect us or say that they're going to work on our behalf or campaign on our behalf. It's not worked for years and years and years and years and years.
That's right.
You know, we could go back, as I said, and look at a million different reports, a million different sanction outcomes and whatever, and we'll prove ourselves right. It's not working. So why are we sitting here waiting for them to do something
and dictate to us?
For us?
Yeah.
Yeah. We have enough to be able to do something for ourselves.
And I think that's the key point. I think that was absolutely spot on. And because actually, if you analyse the situation, the FA, etc., they don't have the drive. That's the key thing. No, they've got the rules. They know what they need to say. But it's a difficult problem to solve because it's in society. They know it's in society. How do we solve it? And you need real drive to deal with it. You need real determination. And unfortunately, the sort of people maybe who are running the FA, etc., maybe don't have that drive for whatever reason. Maybe their backgrounds, the fact it's so difficult, it's such a problem. That sometimes puts people off. Sometimes things just don't happen because actually we just don't know how to deal with it. So it will fall on people like us and the communities that are affected, who have got the drive, who have got the trauma, who have got the hurt, and are tired of it. That we have to supply the drive, and I think that's a really key point.
I think it's working together. Like I think we said, what is it? We've got 12 to 14 Black and Asian clubs in Leicester. I think we've got to make a united stand and stand against this system.
Yes.
Sorry, stand is not the right word. Work with them. Sorry,
absolutely. But provide. But you're right. It's saying enough. But also providing ways that we think it can be tackled better. You know? So it's that exactly. Yeah.
You know, I mean, I'm just going back to one of my cases that early on in the season. I mean, you go to these hearings, and forgive me for saying this, it's always like a middle class 60, 70-year-old who's trying to deal with your case.
People like me.
No, you're still young, John.
I wish you wasn't like John in a lot of those instances.
I think I would be better at it.
Well, you look well for a 60, 70-year-old then, I'll tell you. What you're eating anyway. And they don't know anything demographically or geography or what's going on in the situation in that city or town. And that's one of the major things. Because, you know, what happens in Leicestershire, you've got somebody from Oxfordshire who's sitting on the panel, they haven't got a clue what's going on and the reason behind it, because they don't know anything about Leicestershire or Leicester City, as I say. You know, so they can work with us, like, you know, both of you said, they can actually work with us, because you hear it week in, week out, games being abandoned, you know, racist remark. You know, we're in our right, we can walk off the pitch, you know, as long as you notify the referee. Now, the thing is, you have these Premier League campaigns, FAs are doing this, you've got X, Y and Z coming in and try and say, yeah, we'll try and resolve this, but it's not, it's failing. The whole system is actually failing. Would you say, you know, when you do your level ones or your refereeing course, should they bring in some sort of an education into this?
Yeah, I think that absolutely. I mean, I would never sort of decry education, but I wonder if I don't know what you guys feel, that it comes down to also the fact that if you haven't felt, so on an emotional level, if you haven't felt basically racial hatred directed against you, it is we maybe ought to give people credit. It is very difficult maybe to imagine what that's like. They're not going to feel as passionate. And therefore, I think that's also another argument for more people who have felt it to be on these committees. Because as you say, that's where you maybe get systematic problems. And maybe it's not people's fault. You know, even, in my own world, in my own, friends, etc., they haven't felt what I felt or what my family has gone through. They have a very different psychological outlook because they've never felt discrimination in that sense. And that is an issue, I think. And again, I think whilst we should give that understanding, we should also not just allow the system to continue to be operated by people who themselves should say, look, I don't know what this is like, how it feels, and I think we need to get more people involved. Which is, at this point, it's us getting together to at least help them from that point of view, and hopefully we'll encourage them at some point to also have more people like us who have felt it, who know what that pain is, and it might motivate them a bit more and give them more understanding.
No, agree.
Absolutely.
Kirk, what would you say on that?
I think that, you know, a lot of people that play football are in environments where they have or are employed and they have training around equality and diversity. You know, so people are not amiss of what is racist and what isn't racist, or what's homophobic and what isn't homophobic. So you could keep adding layers and layers and layers of training to this. But the reality is, people know what they're doing. You know, it's very, I didn't understand that if I said that, it meant that.
It's not politically correct.
You know, I didn't realise you could feel offended if I called you a, I'm sorry. It's not like that. That's the reality. So you could keep, you know, training and awareness is always good. Is it going to solve our situation and problem? No, it isn't. Formative action, direct action, grassroots up is the only way that you can make change, from my experience. 30 years we've been doing this. I've been doing this, working, you know, with governing bodies here in the UK and in Europe, and things don't change. Those machines are like Titanics. You know, first it's gone to the bottom of the ocean, you've got to find it and drag it back up, and then hopefully get it back to port. It's not going to happen.
No.
You know, these things, as John identified, sometimes there's got to be a will and a passion to make these changes, and there isn't. You know, if you look at investment around racism and participation, even if you use like a South Asian participation strategy as an example, women and girls, hundreds of £1 million pumped into that to increase participation. Brilliant. Where is it around racism? Where is it around South Asians increasing in football? They don't exist. I've got to a point where I'll go into conversations with these bodies now and say, what's your budget? And they go, we don't have one. I go, well, you're not serious then. Because you can't be telling me you're putting 100, 200 million pounds into women and girls growing the game, which is great, but you don't even want to have an officer for this bit of work.
Yeah,
Never mind
yeah.
a budget. You haven't even got a person that's leading on it. It's ridiculous. You know, we're facing all of these challenges now. Training and awareness, great. You know, let's add it to a range of other things. If we just rely on that, we're relying on nothing.
Do you think, does the bill fit the crime? You know, like, they'll get the odd 2-3 match ban or a couple of months suspension. Do you think the fines or the suspensions or the bans are harsh enough yet?
I've got to be honest, I'm not across what the fines are, because I've never, as I said, I mean, this is, you know, in all those years of being involved in playing for...
Well, on average, it's about £150.
Is it?
Give or take.
I've never seen a team that we played against ever get punished. So I'm not, you know, I took it for granted that there was no accountability, to be honest. And I know there will be cases, but in my own personal time, in all this time, I've never been, you know, involved in a racist incident that ever got dealt with. But clearly, you know, I think, and it's very interesting, I thought, with the incidents that happened at Real Madrid, the number of players who came on, professional players afterwards, and said that that anybody guilty of racism should be banned for life now. It's very interesting. There is a definite, I think even at that level, isn't there? That I've never heard professional footballers actually sort of really say that with such passion. So I think that is an indicative that people feel it's not enough, that the punishments are not enough. They probably do need, that could be something, you know, that we'll be looking at, that they actually need to be greater. You know, it's not simply a bad tackle or something. It's something more heinous than
I think a big problem with that as well, though, John, is if you look in the professional environment now, the one player that stands out in terms of he was prepared on the pitch to address it there and then is Vinicius from Real Madrid.
Yes.
Can you think of another player that springs to mind just like that, that's exactly the same in terms of they're not willing to accept it? And the reason they don't, it's not because it's not happening, it's because it's their careers. And if they start to ruffle feathers, they realise that they're moved out the team, their contracts disappear, their opportunities disappear, and they become chip paper. Whereas players that are out the game and now not dependent on these professional contracts now talk up. But when they're in the game, when we need them to talk, they don't.
No, zip it and shut
They
it,
don't.
isn't
They
it?
don't say nothing. I've been in rooms with 30 professional players going back a decade, live Premier League players who said from their own mouths they will not talk about certain incidents whilst they're playing because they will get sanctioned by the clubs. They'll get clamped down by the clubs. They're being told by their agents not to talk up and talk out as well because it will affect their livelihoods. Now, if you tell a player, look, you're going to lose your 5-year deal and your £50 million contract and whatever, what's bigger to them at that moment in time?
That's their livelihood, isn't it?
It's their livelihood.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not putting blame on them, but if you're not going to speak up in the moment, that's when we need the voices, when they have power. They have power in the moment when they're playing.
Of course they do.
Not when you're a pundit. You don't have power when you're a pundit. Look at Gary Lineker. Gary Lineker was a top pundit in the UK, most highest paid pundit, football pundit, BBC. Soon as he starts to make noise about whatever issues, he's gone.
Yeah,
He's out the game.
Yeah.
Finished. So that's out the game and in the game. So we have to also recognise that environment, they can't talk.
Another player that comes to mind, Mesut Ozil. What happened to him at Arsenal?
Gone.
Yeah, completely disappeared, didn't he, from the game?
You know, so we have to understand that there's certain environments that can support us in certain ways. And there's certain environments that can't support us in ways. We have to work that out. And that's why I say, going back to the kind of organisational stuff at a grassroots level, we're intelligent enough to do that now. You know, we're not playing in farms with bloody cones and putting bags down. You know, we're running big clubs, operational clubs, hundreds of kids, thousands of pounds, scores of games across different parts of the country. And we've been doing this for a while. We know how the thing works. We just need to get organised.
So true. The other thing I want to go on is the reporting of the incidents. You know, talking to people up and down the country, there's more incidents not reported than actual, incidents that are being reported because they know you'll go through headaches of paperwork, witness statements, hearings, and they end up losing the case because it's thrown out, like we said earlier on. Would you say people have lost faith or clubs have lost faith in that? Because I think we were talking about this a while ago. There's only 35% of incidents that are being reported up and down the country. 65% are not, because they know the system's failed them over, decades now, last 20 years, 20 years. It declined a bit in the noughties, and then obviously after COVID, it's just gone ridiculous. Obviously, there's online. Social media doesn't help. Is there any way that can be made easier? John?
I'm sure there is, and I'm sure that's something we need to look at, and we will look at. So there's the evidential part, there's the whole procedural part, how long it takes, the onerous sort of admin of it. But I suppose it's also an interesting thing to note. Again, in my day, that sounds terrible, doesn't it? But in the 80s, it didn't. I've got to be honest, it didn't occur to us to even report it. So in a way, we have come out of at least that level of we don't even expect anybody to care at all about it, and we just got to get on with it and turn up next week and beat that team. But so at least there was, we're now in a position where allegedly, and maybe this isn't a good thing, maybe it's another way of distracting us, that, we've got a system, it just doesn't work. And I think that's the thing. So now we've got to try and make it work.
So I agree with you. Message as well. What they're saying.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, a bit of a long message. Racism remains a deeply embedded and persistent issue in grassroots football, with reports of discriminatory incidents rising significantly, particularly within youth and amateur levels, while high-profile professional level racism makes headlines. Grassroots football often witness more frequent, direct and sometimes ignored incidents of racial abuse, including verbal insults and racist behaviour from players, coaches and parents. This can be addressed through better reporting mechanisms, stricter sanctions, education and training, and cultural and unconscious bias training, body-worn cameras for recording, and anti-racism campaigns. Literally what we've spoken about.
I agree 100%. Get him in. Yeah.
Get him in.
I mean, that's brilliantly summed up.
Yeah, absolutely. Really good.
Yeah,
definitely. So
what next?
Sorry. Hey.
So what next?
Yeah. That's what I was just going to say. You answered. So what is the next step then? Where do we go from here? Okay, we've been dealing with it for the last 40, 50 years, whatever you want to call it. times have changed from what it was in the 70s, 80s. You know, like some of the guys that we know that played in the 70s, you know, they suffered ridiculous abuse.
Absolutely.
You know,
Absolutely.
Sol's one of them. He could give you some stories, can't he? You know.
Absolutely.
Have you ever one put into sleep at night?
Yeah, Sol's your man.
Solomon for
Yeah,
the story.
Sol's your man. I mean, yeah. What is the next step then?
I think the next step is something like hopefully we're doing here in Leicester, which is a certain strength in joining together. So clubs, quite different ethnic clubs actually, joining together. I don't know how often. I mean, you guys will probably know much more than I whether this has happened anywhere else.
No, it's the first time because I think we trialled it out in 2018, didn't we, Kurt?
Yeah. Well, if I just set out going backwards, so pre-COVID, it was about 2018, 2019.
Yes.
We started having a discussion, and we set up then what was called the Diversity
BAME Football Forum.
BAME Football Forum. The BAME bit dropped out because, again, it was unpolitically correct a number of years later. So it's now called the Diversity Football Forum, which is a kind of national body that works with clubs up and down the country in terms of racism, combating racism, working with some of the governing bodies around their things that they do and don't do. What's happened here in Leicester now with some of those same individuals that were part of those original conversations, we've brought or managed to bring all the clubs in Leicester from ethnic backgrounds. So we think there's about 13, 14, maybe 15.
Yeah.
But we've got about 13 around the table now that have signed up. And it's called the Leicester Diversity Football Forum. And what this football forum hopefully will start to do as it goes forward is taking the initiative from the county FAs, from the governing bodies, and taking control of racism in their space within this city. Now, that could be through a range of different mechanisms. It could be training and awareness. It could be campaigns. It could be events. It could be conferences. It could be where the clubs are coming together and doing things together.
Looking at technology.
Looking at the reporting process. And also one of the main ones, I think, that came out of the conversation that you were talking about earlier, John, was around the protocol if a racism incident happens at a grassroots game. So in some of the conversations, just a throwaway example for the audience, across all the club's membership, I can't remember what we said in terms of a figure, but it'd be thousands across all the 13, 14 clubs of parents, players, coaches, volunteers, committee members.
Well over 1,000.
You're talking about thousands and thousands, I think,
great.
because there's some big clubs in there that have been around for years. And you imagine that one of those clubs suffered a serious racist incident on a weekend, and all of those clubs stood on block the following week and said, we are not going to accept this, and we're going to boycott next week's fixtures.
Media would have a field day, wouldn't
You
they?
imagine that no ethnic minority clubs are participating in football because the governing bodies have failed us. Just think
Definitely,
about that for one moment,
100%.
what that would look like. It would cause ripples across the footballing system. Now, you have the power to do that. You know, you wouldn't do it randomly and just say, oh, no, everyone stop playing. It's got to be with a process behind it that you've all agreed, and it's out there so people understand why you've done it. And, you can't be, and I'm not saying that this body will, but you can't be using the race card. It's a very, very valuable thing that is, once you lose your credibility around throwing it around for no reason, you're gone out the game.
You get tarnished as well, don't you?
You've gone out the game.
Yeah.
But basically, coming back to the point, so Ahmed and John are the chairs or co-chairs of the Leicester DFF, and they're working on a charter behind the scenes. They're working on a programme over the next 12 to 24 months.
Yep.
And if these clubs in Leicester now that we've brought together can stick together for that period and deliver the charter, this will be a pilot. So this is the first of its kind nationally in the country. So it's exciting.
It is.
I'm really excited about it. You can probably tell from the way I'm speaking about it. But these guys now, because they're in the driving seat in terms of operationally on the ground, it'll be down to them now to take away this conversation and what we know and turn it into some tangible actions. Yeah. And I think it's going to be big.
Yeah. And this isn't, we're not working against the system.
No,
we want to work with the system.
Exactly
Absolutely.
what I was going to say. We want to work with all the other stakeholders, the other clubs, because they're not our enemy.
No.
We want them to be in it with us,
And we need
want the
them.
FA. We
Yeah,
need
of course
them,
we do, of course
absolutely.
we do, yeah.
We want to work with officials. We want to work with parents. It all sounds very worthy, but actually no, it's really important now. Because there is just no way that this it can be tolerated at the level it is, especially with things going on outside and politically. It's a really important time to bring people together. So that's really our primary focus, is how do we get people to work with us? We want to work with the FA, don't we?
Of course we do.
Of course we do.
That's what we want to do.
It's like we're going on. It's like we're all going to go on a trip together.
Yeah.
And we
It's a
just want
journey.
our turn in driving.
Yeah,
Correct.
yeah. It's
That's
a journey.
what it is.
It's a journey of
It's a
football, isn't
journey.
it? Yeah.
But also, we're the fact we are united, the fact we have so many different voices and different cultural voices, I think also adds strength to us, that we have a unity. So they don't also have to deal with lots of different people. They can just deal with one single body that is focused, is hopefully professional, and really has got the best interests of everybody in society at heart.
No, true.
And I
So
think
true.
That's
true.
really important. So I'm really excited. I really am excited.
I'm really excited.
No,
about
definitely. And if it works in Leicester, this can be rolled up
Yeah.
and down the country.
Absolutely,
I
that's
mean,
the
we're
plan.
just a small city, and can you imagine somebody like Birmingham, Manchester,
Yeah.
Leeds, London,
Yeah.
where you've
Oh,
got
yeah.
hundreds and hundreds of clubs up there,
Yeah.
and this could be rolled up. And like you say, we're not against the system, we want to work with the system. That's the most important thing.
Yeah.
We have to, because they're always going to be the governing body, and
course
we
they are.
want to participate in that space. But we want to participate feeling safe, feeling protected,
Yeah.
and feeling listened to. And if we can get those things across to the governing bodies, that we do want to be in these spaces, but you've got to listen to what we're saying.
Yeah.
These are real life experiences.
Yes.
They're not, we're not
Yeah.
talking from the hip and
Yeah.
shooting left and right.
Yeah.
These are real.
Yeah.
100%.
And also,
These are real.
importantly, Kurt, they're painful experiences. I don't
They
think
are,
we should
they
shy
are.
away from that.
100%.
They are painful experiences. And no governing body, none of our other fellow clubs with maybe predominantly white teams or parents, nobody should want to allow pain to be inflicted on people in that way. So that's why, again, one hopes on that very basic human level that we can talk to people and try and sort
And there
this out.
might be a black and Asian player who's playing for a predominantly white team. We can support them because he might have an
Absolutely.
incident. So we're not just there for the
Sure.
black and Asian, we're there
Sure.
for every single club. I mean, we can talk about this till the cows come home. Do you know what I mean? I think we're quite limited for time as well. Kirk, final message for you, for the listeners.
I think just watch this space from a sports perspective, because this model won't just be unique to football, but we're doing it in football because obviously that's our background. I'm really pleased that the Diversity Football Forum will be able to work with the Leicester Forum to be able to shape this. And I'm really excited. I'm really excited. I think it is the first time we've ever, as a community, come together in a sports space. And all of those voices that have been around the table for the last, how many months now? 4, 5, 6 months, whatever it's been, has been really, really positive and productive. Everybody's contributing and everybody is still there, which is
which
is
is good,
unique.
yeah.
And let's see what happens.
John?
Yeah, no, I mean, I just think, just generally, all of us in our lives as well, not just in football, this is something that's really worth everybody engaging with. I mean, obviously, we're talking primarily to people interested in football, but we should all, I believe, judge each other on our own conduct and our own actions, and not by reference to whatever group we're in. And that's what we want in football. We just want to be judged by our own actions and our own conduct, and not to be judged because of our race. And that's, I think, just generally, that's what I would like to see. I know it sounds, but that's what I'm hoping.
No, so you're right. I mean, we've only got less than just over a minute left. So just on the concluding part, it's not about optics. It's not about political correctness. It's about children, adults being racially abused in a much-loved sport of football, as we all know. Yes, we've got a culture and a social problem. Leaders stop minimising. Parents stop excusing. Governing bodies are failing us constantly. Every footballer listening, you've got to keep a thick. You do not need to keep a thicker skin. You deserve a better system, because at the end of the day, everybody gets up on a Saturday or a Sunday. They just want to play football. Let off a bit of steam, from family life, work, or whatever it is. They just want to. And I don't think your colour, your culture, dignity, religion is non-negotiable.
Absolutely.
That's more. Your value does not diminish you at all. You should be proud of who you are, what you are. And like you've said, together we stand. united, and let's fight it for the current and future generation. That's what it's all about. We've experienced it in our life.
Can I just throw one thing in?
Of course you can.
For anyone listening to this back or watching it or whatever they're going to do later on, because I'll be surprised who's watching this or listening to it at this time of night, only we're crazy enough to be here, is if you can help or support this, get in touch with Ahmed at CFA, because we still need bodies from the outside to be part of this as well. It can't just be done inside out.
Yeah, and on that last note, let's just pray for what's going on, the tensions around the world for everybody.
Pray for everybody.
And let's just pray for peace and everybody.
Very
And
much
on
so.
that one, Jazakallah khair, and thank you very much.
Assalamu alaikum.